the Arlington Finance Committee is called to order. First order of business is the minutes, which I know everybody has reviewed.
Sure.
Remember, we're trying to save trees here. So are there any corrections to the minutes?
Mary Margaret gave me a couple of fund balances that I missed before.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, do I have a motion?
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the minutes as amended with fund balances. Any other questions? Discussion? Comments? Corrections? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. The two of you?
Yes.
Okay.
Hi.
I'm sorry?
We're with the Arlington Rainbow LGBTQ Commission.
Now, is that the same as the LGBT?
Yes.
There's one group.
Yes.
Okay. I had a plus in there, so I wasn't quite
Oh.
one to confirm. Grant, school budget, box. Yes, there'll be a test.
Only one?
Just one.
Thank you.
Don't worry about it.
Excuse me? I can bribe you?
4 of them in the box.
Okay, tonight we have a hearing, and by the way, I contacted the Arlington Commission on Arts and Culture. This is all the stuff I usually let Liz do, but I did it successfully, so I haven't lost the touch. And they're going to have a budget and a 3-year revenue and expenditure to us by Monday. So, so if we, after seeing that, we want them to come in, then I'll schedule a hearing for the following Monday. Okay, so with that, I'll turn it over to, okay, thank you. I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you.
The floor is yours.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you for having us.
Good evening. My name is Bill Gardner, and
I'm Lisa Krinsky.
we're here representing the Arlington Town Rainbow Commission. Maybe some of you were at the town meeting a couple of years ago when the commission was voted on quite strongly by members of the town, and we were grateful for that support. Took us about a year to kind of get organized and get ourselves off the ground. And since then, we've been meeting quite regularly on a monthly basis and in our different subcommittees, trying to bring people from the LGBTQ community in the town together to communicate with folks in the community and provide support for them, and also to serve as an intermediary between the community and the town of Arlington itself, so that we can have representation in schools, in the school system, around issues affecting LGBTQ youth, and in the town government in areas of employment, insurance, etc. So we've been very gratified by the support we've gotten from town leaders as we've started that work. And I just wanted to note a couple of things that we feel really good about it in terms since we've gotten off the ground. One has been the Pride event that we had on the Pride weekend last June. We had over 150 members come together from the LGBTQ community here in the town to celebrate Pride on that event. We were quite surprised by the turnout and gratified. And also on Town Day, we had a booth set up and got a lot of response from citizens in the town eager to find out about the work that we're doing and ways of connecting with them. We are also very involved in a strategic planning process to define what it is we hope to do in the coming year. So we're grateful to have support for that. We did send out, I think, a copy of the annual report was sent out to members of the committee, and if you didn't get that or would like a backup paper copy, I have some here. And Lisa has some numbers to talk about in terms
Sure.
of the budget.
So thanks very much for having us this evening. I think we are right about at the one-year mark for the commission actually beginning to meet and come together and figure out what we're doing. So this first year has been, as Bill said, an opportunity for us to figure out the directions we want to move in and how we want to focus. And I would also add that we are also making connections through the senior center and trying to focus on issues that are impactful to older adults who live in our community as well. And so we had sent along a copy of the budget, and I'm not sure who Elizabeth is, who we sent.
And unfortunately, did anybody get a copy of the budget?
You want to pass it?
You know what? I did not bring enough copies for everyone. I apologize because I misunderstood and thought that she
So
was
why
going to send
don't you
it.
go through the numbers and we'll copy them down.
Sure. Okay. So I apologize for not being prepared that way. So we have an overall budget request of $4,000 for the upcoming year. One of the first items would be around some strategic planning and having a full-day strategic planning retreat so that we can really prioritize the breadth and width of the work that we want to be able to do in the community. As Bill said, also Town Day with a $500 request, and that would be sort of for everything that we need to participate at registration and handouts and goodies for people to participate in Town Day with us. We are also hoping to have up to 5 community engagement events. We have had a broad range of those this past year. Some of them was some educational information about transgender rights and transgender issues when the vote was coming up in the November elections. We've had some smaller activities for just crafts and get-togethers, but also looking at doing some educational and other programming. We are also looking for funding just for marketing, outreach, printing, all the stuff that we sort of give to people so they know who we are. Some other one-time only expenses to purchase some chairs and tables to sit on at Town Day, and some pride flags and things like that that would just help us in terms of hosting events. And then the Pride event itself, where we were looking for a budget of $500 for food for 200 people, since we were pleasantly surprised by an extra 100 who came to be with us on Pride this past year. And so that is pretty much the breakdown of this, and I'm happy
Can
to.
you go through those again? The Pride event you said was how much?
500.
Okay,
The event and program supplies was 500.
okay, wait a minute.
Okay.
You started with the retreat.
Okay, so I apologize. So the retreat was $1,200 to have a consultant work with us for the day and figure that out. Town Day was 500. The 5 events was 800 for speaker, food, supplies. Marketing, outreach, printing was 500. The event supplies 500, and then another 500 for the Pride events. And I can send a copy of this also off to you if that's helpful.
Sure, I mean, I think this is pretty self-explanatory.
Okay.
Okay, so 1,200 for the retreat, primarily for a consultant to come in.
Right.
Do you see that as a one-shot deal or repeating?
Well, we've had some smaller meetings with her already, but this was sort of the idea of the one time only for that day. I think we're sort of evolving in terms of the extent to which we create a sort of a plan of action and where we might want to come back and revisit that. But I think at this point we were looking at that one.
Okay. 500 for Town Day, 800 for a series of events, workshops, things
Yep,
like.
exactly.
500 for printing materials.
Mhm.
500 for table and chairs. I would assume that would be a one-time.
Yes, those are one-time only purchases.
And the Pride event is 500 primarily for food.
Yes.
Okay. Do you, questions from the committee? John?
When you're allocated money, who places purchase orders for you and who cuts the checks for you?
Christine Bongiorno has been the town staff person who we've worked with. I assume that she has continued to take that responsibility.
Okay.
Well, actually, she's trying to hire a program manager, so the program, until that person is hired, Christine would do it.
Okay.
Just asking because obviously the town has discounts with all of the suppliers that you're talking about for printing and flags and everything.
Good to know.
So if the town's issuing the purchase order, the vendor should be providing whatever the 20% discount or whatever the discounts are, that, because the town itself is spending a lot more money with those
Right.
suppliers.
Thank you for mentioning that. I hadn't thought of that.
Now, did the money from last year come out of the Human Services budget? Because you didn't have a budget last year.
Right, I believe that it did.
Okay. Christine?
The $1,200 retreat, where did that number come from? Have you priced it
Directly
out?
from the consultant who we'd spoken with.
Where would you hold the retreat? In a town facility?
I think so.
Yeah.
If we could do that, I think the complications will probably need a weekend day to do that, so figuring out what's available to us on the weekend, but that would be great if there was space.
Other questions? Dean?
I have a question. On that same $1,200, I'm going to ask you a sort of specific question towards you, but it's part of a larger general trend I've noticed
Mhm.
over the last few years. So even though it's going to be directed at you guys, it's not really just you.
Okay.
So I see this trend and sort of coming here is, so when we post for volunteers on committees, boards, commissions, things like that, we have these postings that they're like, you need a certain background and experience and qualifications. And you say, okay, we've got these boards and they should be good at their work. And the first thing they do is they have to hire a consultant to tell them how to do their job. Or like, we like passed this CPA override, and also we need town employees to help do the work of the committee. So it's a growing trend in Arlington boards and committees and commissions that the volunteers need somebody else to help do the work outside of the committee. Why? Like, what is lacking in the membership of your committee that you can't do the work without a consultant?
That's a really good question. I think that we are comprised of a variety of different people from different backgrounds who bring different skill sets to the table. So I think that is one part of it. And I think that the other piece is trying to figure out how we all get to participate. And not, I think when you're leading a program like that, you are more focused on facilitating what's happening in the room and not necessarily participating and sharing your own perspectives as to the directions that we would go in. So I think there's something in that role of facilitating that's unique to get people to that point of being able to arrive at the kinds of information you want from a strategic planning meeting.
But you don't see this repeating next year? Hiring a consultant in the retreat?
I don't know at this point. I think we need to see sort of what we get accomplished with that strategic plan, and whether it would be something that we could sort of accomplish all of that then and there and have a plan that would take us for whatever time frame into the future.
David?
I just have two questions. Do you plan on doing your own fundraising?
We hadn't talked about it.
You have talked about it?
We haven't talked about it.
Because I know some other volunteer groups do somewhat of their own fundraising for different things that they plan. And on the figure, you're looking for $4,000 on the next budget. Do you see that $4,000 figure going up in the future?
You know, I don't know at this point. I think we are still a relatively new group. I think part of our strategic planning is going to figure out what kind of work we're going to be doing, and if we decide that we need to have a lot more events with larger groups of people, we may need different kind of funding to support those events. So some of that you're raising good questions for us to think about as we move forward.
Thank you.
Annie?
Any possibility that your strategic plan is going to come with a 3 to 5 year financial projection for what your future needs will be?
I don't know. Would that be helpful to?
I think it would help answer a lot of the questions the committee is asking you, which are basically about, what is your projected future financial needs? Because I know it feels like a small budget, but, lots of commissions with small budgets and
Mhm.
they add up.
Sure.
And we want to be sure that, those dollars are wisely spent, and we really understand what, before allocating those things that add up.
So I appreciate that, because I think we haven't gotten to those places yet, so you're providing us with good questions that we can then incorporate into. So a financial plan along with strategic plan,
Yeah.
how those are linked, yep.
Again, it's a small number, so it doesn't have to be, a huge financial model, but just, here's what we think our ongoing needs going forward are, and
Mhm.
here's some allowance for one-time events that we think would be reasonable.
Sure.
Some justification for those things.
Sure, okay.
So we are
Question.
a new group, and we're trying to feel our way into how to construct a budget and what kind of programs we want to have. But I do think it's important to note that some of the expenses here are one-time things for banners and posters, that type of thing. And also, I'm assuming that whatever strategic planning we're going to be doing is going to take us out 2 or 3 years
Mhm.
if it's going to be effective. So that will impact on what dollars we will be spending.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they're happy to include that.
Okay, Charlie?
What is the mission of the commission?
So the mission of the commission is that actually listed here in our report? I can tell you, but we may, sorry. Yeah, so second paragraph.
Second paragraph.
To promote equality affirming policies regarding the full spectrum of sexual orientation and gender identities, and to bring greater visibility and empowerment to the LGBTQIA+ population through education, advocacy, and collaboration with other town agencies, schools, and community groups.
Is part of your mission, I mean, obviously, over the last 10, 20 years, there's been a high number of suicides among gay youth.
Mm-hmm.
Is that part of you see that as part of your mission to bring that down?
So I think we're looking at ways that we can connect with LGBTQ youth in Arlington and partially learning a little bit more about what some of the issues are, how to engage them in really positive ways. I'm blanking. Mystic, fill me in because you
Mystic LGBTQ Youth Support Network has been very involved with that, which is a sister organization. But we're really working to develop relationships with young people in our schools. The high school has a chapter. Ottoson Junior High School has a wonderful working group representing young people in that area, and we even have programs in grade schools like the Brackett School. So there's a lot of exciting things going on in the town engaging our youth, and they really need the support.
I'll also add my day job is as the director of the LGBT Aging Project at Fenway Health, so I'm very thoughtful about older adults, and we have been doing some work with the senior center, and also wanting it to sort of be across the age spectrum, that there are LGBT folks with young families. They want to get a sense of connection to other folks in the neighborhood, and so really trying to think as far and wide for both the residents and people who live here, as well as the people and programs that the town is responsible for.
How do you see yourself, sorry, Daryl?
You mentioned in here that you're in touch with LGBTQ and the Lex Pride.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a formal effort to reach out to other cities and towns, some of which probably have had commissions longer? And one, for seeing where you can leverage work they've already done, and two, identifying where there's possible synergies?
That was exactly what we did in our first few meetings, was we invited the Cambridge folks in, and they have a long-standing commission, and then also reaching out to Lex Pride as our other neighbors to talk. And some of what we've also tried to do is to collaborate on events, so not necessarily to have us each doing one, but that we can collaborate, for example, with Lex Pride on an event and work with them. So we were definitely trying to get an idea about how they function, what their mission is, and where we could learn from their lessons as well.
Is that something you see doing in a more formal and expanded way going forward? Because I would think that what other cities and towns have done could be useful, maybe not directly applicable to us, but still useful.
Actually, in relationship to that, in the process of putting the commission together, bringing it to the town, we did a research, a website research of all of the organizations across the country where endeavors. And it's amazing to see the grassroots organizing that's happened in all of the states across the country related to support of the LGBTQ community. But it's interesting to note that there are not more than 20 towns or cities that have a legally recognized entity, such as the one that we have here that was voted on by the town. So in a certain sense, we're also kind of one of the unique groups in the country having this legal status.
20 in the country or 20 in Massachusetts?
20 in the country.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Will you be coordinating your efforts with the Human Rights Commission?
I think that we have had some overlap. Remind me, 1 or 2 of our members are also
Yeah.
on the Human Rights Committee, so I think we've been trying. I know in response to the incidents that took place at the high school last year, we worked closely with them in terms of what happened following that and the responses in the community.
Okay. Are there any other questions from the committee? I'd like to thank you for coming. We appreciate your work, and best of luck going forward.
Great, thank you very
so
much for
much.
your time, and thank you for your questions. They're really useful to us as we formulate how we're moving forward.
That was the cover, it was the notes that, when you passed out, this was,
Oh, okay.
it's just notes that you
Oh,
That's a good.
passed.
And if you could just email myself and Liz the budget, that
okay, and
one
can I
page.
get your email address?
Actually, just send it to Liz.
Okay, I will send it to her, and she'll send it along to you all. Great, thank you. Sorry that didn't get to you in advance.
That's okay. If it was a school budget, we'd be upset.
Happy not to have to discuss that one with you.
That's right.
Have a good evening.
Okay, thank you. Dean?
I move $4,000 is recommended, then I'll let Alan make comments on how we shouldn't beat up volunteers. And he gave my vote back, so I'm gonna give him his comment back. Go ahead.
You have a good memory.
It actually resonated with me when you said it the first time.
Okay,
It's
let's
testy in here.
take this whole thing one at a time. Dean, you're making a motion to appropriate $4,000.
Second.
Okay, and there's a second. Discussion. Okay, wow. Brian, Liz, John.
Straightforward, I think we should just, as we do this, we should look for that number to be approximately $2,500 next year, unless something out of the ordinary comes. I mean, so that we do this, we listen to what they said, part of this is supposedly gonna be one time, and we just keep that in the minutes,
Yeah.
I think, just so that we have it.
Absolutely. Christine?
A couple of things. First, I think we should note that they are asking for less than 50% of what we're giving the Human Rights Commission. Secondly, much of what they're asking for seems to be a one-time thing. And with respect to the retreat, having been a founding member of the Human Rights Commission, I can tell you that the Human Rights Commission also had a retreat. And my memory, it was a while ago, was that it was somewhere in this vicinity price-wise, and it was actually cheaper when we did it because we did it at Bill Shea's office, so he got in the food and all of that. So I see this as a natural expectation, a natural thing that they want, and we've done it for at least one other commission, and I think what they're asking for is reasonable.
Okay. And John?
So I had a comment, and since I'm making the comment, maybe I'll volunteer myself for the task if others think it's worthwhile. I wonder if it would be possible to create a very short document that when somebody from one of these commissions came, a volunteer commission, we would say, this is how you spend the town's money. Because in my experience with spending money for the tree committee and other organizations, they don't always know that the town's got a 20% discount, and if they don't ask for it, they don't get it. And if a purchase was going through the town purchasing department, they would put the screws on them and make sure the town got the best price. When the volunteer is calling up and saying, we need flyers and whatever, and we need food, they might not get that. So I don't know how I would create a document like this, or if the committee thinks it's worthwhile, or if I would talk to the town purchasing department. But maybe when a volunteer group like this comes and says, we want this money, we give them something that says, you get the money and this is your process for spending it to make sure we get the most bang for the buck.
That's interesting, because I think, well, we have obviously a purchasing agent. So perhaps, John, if you could give Don, he's in the manager's office, a call and raise that point and say, do you have a how-to-do list? Or how to do this? And he might be able to just whip it off his printer and give it to you, or send it to you.
Okay.
So I think it's worthwhile. So
Okay.
if you can make the phone call, we'd appreciate that.
Okay.
Okay, Annie?
Yeah, so partly what Chris was talking about is the reason that I asked these guys this question about, can you give us some kind of projection? I mean, I'm always a little nervous when somebody answers a question I don't know, although in this case I think there's really legitimate reasons why they don't know, they're just getting off the ground. But when they come before us next year, I want them to be able to distinguish between, we're asking you for money for a project for this year, and these are our ongoing expenses that we're gonna come to you for every year. And so that was my main reason to be pushing them. And so perhaps that is also advice we need to give to other committees. I don't know, I mean, I only know this from Vision 2020, where I've helped Julie put together budgets and budget arguments, and, I always I always make sure she frames it that way on those occasions when she's had to come here. So, but I'm totally supportive of the money, and I think it is short money. So.
Any other comments? Okay, motion's made and seconded for $4,000. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, unanimous. Okay, so we have the advisory, transportation advisory. Oops, this is the 13th. That's right. Transportation advisory is on Monday, and then Minuteman. If for some reason you didn't get the Minuteman presentation, Annie got it from Kevin Mahoney, and then I shipped it off to everybody. So you should have it, and everybody should have the school budget. Please, I don't want to carry all those home on that. And we'll go from there. Budgets.
I'm sorry, Al, when is Minuteman?
I'm sorry?
When is Minuteman?
Monday.
Monday.
They're both on Monday.
The Transportation Advisory Committee is at 7:30. I expect that'll be short. I think they're looking for $2,000. And Minuteman is at 7:45. That's longer because they're looking for more money than $2,000.
Just a little.
A little bit. And then on Wednesday the 20th, the school budget's coming in. That'll be very important. Please study your budgets and have the appropriate questions on. Okay, anything else? Budgets. Okay.
I just wanted to ask the last two questions, or answer the last two questions.
Okay, why don't you go with that?
Okay, so one of the questions was, we were talking about where do the gifts, the donations go in the Health and Human Services budget. So this is the budget statement.
Mary Margaret, the gifts what?
I'm sorry, what?
In what budget?
Oh, this is Health and Human, or it's actually the AYCC budget. Where do the gifts go? The donations go? So this is what the statement that I received. With funding support from the state helping to offset increased personnel expenses in FY20, AYCC will allocate revenue from fundraising initiatives and donations to a separate gift account that funds the community resource specialist position and additional hours for the psych nurse practitioner to see clients. That's the official statement for that. And then the question about the $25,000 of maintenance and repairs in the rink. It was determined that we needed to have an account set up for that, for just, everyday repairs and maintenance. So in order to support that, $25,000 from the town was put into the revenue side of the.
Okay, so that 25,000 is
From the town, 25,000.
from the general fund.
Right.
Do they expect that that will continue? In other words, we'll keep it?
Well, I think they'll
allocating-
evaluate it each year to see if they really need 25,000, but
Okay. Does that satisfy those questions? John?
I'm not sure I understood the donations one. So they had put in 2017 a $500 gifts and donations.
right.
You just said that they raised money, they put it in a different bank account, a different
This
fund.
is, I don't know how to pronounce, is it Colleen Leger?
Yep.
Okay. This is what she sent to me. This is in the budget statement, I'm reading what she sent to me. This was in the budget statement. With funding support from the state helping to offset increased personnel expenses in FY20, AYCC will allocate revenue from fundraising initiatives and donations to a separate gift account that funds the community resource specialist position and additional hours for the psych nurse practitioner. And that's the best answer I can get.
Mr. Chairman?
So-
Dean?
I would assume, without having any specific knowledge, I probably should, that money that's donated to the government, to the AYCC, would go into a special revenue fund that could roll over year to year. Otherwise, you'd be in a situation, if you brought it straight into the general fund, money wasn't expended, so you had the event, let's say on June 1,
Right.
it would clear to free cash on June 30 if it didn't go into a revolving fund. So I shouldn't go to special revenue, revolving fund. So I think what the answer is saying is donation money goes into a revolving fund, carries over year to year as needed, and then when it's expended, it's charged against the revolving fund.
Now, there is a private corporation that raises these funds. It's the,
You mean like for the gala?
yeah, I believe that's run by a separate human services corporation.
Is it a nonprofit?
I'm sorry?
Is it a nonprofit?
Yeah.
Like
Okay.
Friends of.
Could be that.
So,
That's why I hate to see things going off.
I know, and this
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
it's
that's
all
why I
private.
said, send me the statement you want me to read, which both Sandy and Colleen gave me the statement.
Okay.
Right. I think there's a pot of money somewhere that is off budget. And what we're not seeing is we're not seeing a line in the budget that says we're supporting items in the expenses above using money from that account. It may be entirely separate. It's sort of like we don't get grant
Right.
accounting from anybody. So that may be part of what's going on now. I don't know, it's worth
When you did
asking
the,
Sandy.
sorry,
Yeah, but this is from Sandy.
Yeah, but that's not dollars and cents.
Oh, I
so-
see.
to follow up
Numbers.
on that point, when you
Yeah.
did the Fox Library, like when you did the library budgets, there was a
Uh-huh.
line that said, this is $20,000
Right,
from Friends of Fox Library, which I thought was useful
Mhm.
and explanatory.
Mhm.
And if there's a pot of, if there is a date at some point in the future where we're cutting budgets, knowing that somebody else is throwing,
Mhm.
just in order of magnitude, are they throwing $500 a year to the things or $50,000 a year? Would be, I think if they just accounted for it the same way the Fox Library did, that we would feel like we knew more about it.
right. But, I think some of the issue is that, depending on how many kids and families come through,
Mhm.
the psych nurse and the psychiatrist.
Might have overtime,
This-
yeah.
Well, the psychiatrist isn't even an employee,
Yeah.
so it's
Mhm.
more contracted service. I can go back and tell these same people what you said, but this is the statement I got to read from Sandy
Okay.
and,
Yeah,
Colleen
we'd like to
Leger.
see, there's a human services corporation that raises funds, runs the gala, does all this stuff. It's, it's a nonprofit, and specifically for AYCC. And it'd be good to see, like John mentions, the money's coming into the budget And then, you know, I'd rather see the psychiatrist and the nurse hire, and then a revenue source to support that, so we see where the money is coming in. So if you could dig a little deeper on that, I'd appreciate it.
I dug, you got it.
Okay.
It's a little bit squishy. I mean, let me tell you why. For example, my wife Mary and Elaine Shea had for 18 or so years run something called First Step, which was for better, certainly for better women, women who needed counseling and that sort of thing. And their names and all the things associated with helping them in one way or another were kept secret, and even where they held their meetings was kept secret because there was a certain amount of risk involved. So it took them a little while to figure out how to handle the money that they would get as contributions for what they did. For instance, and this is, I think, why was kind of strange.
Okay.
All right, I'll ask, I'll go back to Sandy.
Yeah,
ask
and
questions,
you know,
see if
for
he
the,
wants to put it in a revolving fund.
what Mary and Elaine did for battered women, obviously needs to go below the radar screen.
Right.
And
so
I think, you know, but this
somehow
is,
account was set up. I mean, they would get money, and it would go to the comptroller, and then they couldn't use it because of where it had gone previously until they set up the right kind of account so that they could draw the money to help someone that they needed.
that's why there's a Human Services Corporation to fund things like this.
Yeah.
And just, can't remember the exact name of it, but,
I can tell you.
okay, great.
It's the Arlington Health and Human Services Charitable Corporation.
That's it.
A 501c3.
Okay, I will go back to everybody and ask for a better statement.
Yeah, well, it just, you know, because they had to give more than $500 back in 2017. They
Yeah,
haven't-
come on, and if you look in last year's book, there was more money in that line.
yeah. Ellen?
So I had a question, going back to the rink. Which simply, I get that there's the $25,000 from the town to create a new fund for $25,000 for maintenance, but all of a sudden, it's a 4% subsidy on the rink that I don't think we've ever done before. Just, you know, why all of a sudden is the town subsidizing the rink
Well,
operation?
no.
It's not a capital expense, the rink operation.
Yeah, but
It's operations.
those funds were subsidized before. There was always the plug number was the money from the town. But they determined, and I didn't, you know, I talked to Sandy, I talked to Rink, I talked to Christine, I talked to Sandy. And they felt, who were working at the rink, felt that there needed to be a fund to support general maintenance and repairs.
Well, right, but.
And that it would.
But why would it have to be a taxpayer subsidized? I mean, the line item is zero until 2020.
Right, because they.
So at least the last 3 years, there wasn't any subsidy. And I don't remember there ever being a subsidy.
I think it was just done a different way. Like I said, these budgets have evolved, and so it's, the last few years is.
Well, at least the way the budgets are written, have gone from the rink being, for operations, being self-supporting,
Right.
to all of a sudden a 4% support level from taxpayer money. And I'm just wondering, I mean, it seems to me like a policy decision that all of a sudden taxpayers are gonna start funding operations of the rink. The rink is no longer self-supporting. Because maintenance is a necessary thing, but they must have previously paid it out of rink fees and things like that.
Right.
Unless it was
Right.
sliding into the
There wasn't a
fence.
separate, yes, there wasn't a separate.
I mean, what's new is the transfer from other funds, which is from the general fund, which I believe is new, and it's 4%, it's not true, right?
Right, and I suspect that they'll figure out that maybe they don't need 25,000 going forward, but again, I can go back and ask Sandy. I don't know that I'll get a different answer.
I mean, so I understand setting up a maintenance fund is a good idea. What I don't understand is why it's being funded from the general fund.
Okay, Charlie?
So, with respect to the rink, 50% of their debt service has always been funded
by the general fund, or at least, I wouldn't say always, but at least for the last 10 years.
Mhm.
For capital. For capital,
Yeah.
and because the capital expenses outpace their ability to raise fees. Now they're actually projecting paying more of the debt service in years going forward. So it's not in return for funding the operations. No, I mean, an enterprise fund is supposed to collect its fees and pay its expenses and pay its capital expenses, its operating expenses and capital expenses from income. What that income doesn't cover gets paid by the general fund. That's the way an enterprise fund works. Well, I understand that, but it's only, the AYCC is the only one that in general has had that transfer, the rest of them have been self-sufficient. Like water and sewer self-sufficient.
I think you get to the point, well, I do have one question on that, is if we got a fund balance of $49,286, rather than take $25,000 from the general fund, why not take it from fund balance?
Well, we can see if it's there, but it may have already been spoken for in the,
Okay, well,
the
that's,
funds
That
for.
was last June.
Yeah.
well,
Fund-
last
no.
June.
I mean, it was a point in time that I asked for the fund balance.
Right, but I'm saying is, could that fund balance be used for the 25,000?
If there's 25,000 left in it.
And I think
or if
it's-
it's not already earmarked for other programs.
Right, okay. Okay, any other questions? in the Ring. Okay, Public Works,
Public Works,
page 84.
page 84, starting with natural resources. All right, so the increases in the salaries and wages category are contractual. There's really nothing much to report with respect to that. There are $65,000 more in expenses being budgeted for this year, and almost all of that is for tree work that the Public Works is planning to do. The $30,000 increase in the 5202 maintenance line is for contracted services for tree care.
I'm sorry, what care?
Tree care.
Tree care.
There is an additional $30,000 in the budget for, under tree pest management, that is to combat the emerald ash borer insect that we do not yet have in this town, but surrounding towns do have it. And it is probable that we will get that insect, and it's pretty devastating. The tree work that's being done is, let me back up. The town recently completed a tree management study that had some significant recommendations to the town on how to handle and take care of our trees. And this budget is a step towards trying to implement some of that. Most of the tree well, actually, all of the tree planting that the town will do will be done in-house because it's cheaper that way rather than hiring services to do it. The tree care, the maintenance, including watering, pruning, and I don't know what else, will be done in a combination of both in-house and contractual services arrangement. The tree pest management will probably be done in-house, but there hasn't been a final decision about that. The $30,000 for the emerald ash borer is really a drop in the bucket, and probably not anywhere near what will actually the town will actually need to address this once the insect comes to town. But it's a start. There's a thought that the $30,000 will be spent for in-house work or partly in-house and partly outside contractual services. The other increases in the natural resource budget is for historic sculpture maintenance. The intent this year is to do some restoration on some memorial plaques in town. And a new line item is small equipment, 5832, and that is to take care of small equipment expenses that had previously been in the capital planning budget. So Annie and I recommend that the natural resources budget be approved as printed.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second it.
Discussion, questions? Charlie?
What's the solution to the emerald ash borer?
I can answer that.
Step on one.
There's some kind of chemical that can be inserted at the roots of the tree that grows up into the tree that then kills the beetle. You have to do it every year. So there's 916 ash trees that are street trees. And those are the trees that we're talking about. We're not talking about any trees in the forest canopy in any of the parks. We're not talking about ash trees on people's personal property. And some of those trees are not in great shape, and they may just let them go or remove them and replace them with something else, like a small number of them. And then I think part of the debate about that $30,000 is, are they hiring somebody to do that treatment, or are they going to do that treatment in-house? Okay, and then, until we actually see the insect, which is inevitable, I don't think they really know what it's going to take to protect those trees, or whether we're better off to ultimately work our way into replacing them.
So why aren't we doing the parks?
I think we didn't even really ask Mike that question. I think part of the reason that we're not doing the parks is because somebody would have to go into the parks and look for ash trees and figure out how many we've got and figure out what condition they're in and so on and so forth. And I just don't think they feel like they have the resources to do that, and that the street trees are their main, they don't want a diseased ash tree to fall on a house, obviously.
But
So,
I would just comment that,
yeah.
I think it's the Boy Scouts, I'm not sure.
Mhm.
Or it could have been the Girl Scouts, I don't know. It's one of those scouting organizations has a merit badge that they give for identifying trees. People, they go out and they put tags on the trees and what they are. So, maybe that could be, we could get some volunteers to do that.
Right, I can go back to Mike with that idea. I'm not sure, obviously it doesn't affect this budget.
Yeah, I agree.
But I think the other difficulty he's going to have is, let's say they identify another 800 trees in parks that are ash trees. Do we have the resources to then fight the battle every year on all of them? So, and I don't know as we know until we start to see the beetle.
John, when the tree survey took place,
Yeah, so-
did that actually list?
Yeah, so that's where the 967 ash trees come from. We mapped on the bike trail, and we mapped trees that DPW might have to maintain, so like along a path in Monotony Rocks Park, but not deep in Monotony Rocks Park. Different towns are handling this differently. Belmont is doing nothing, but just going to let the trees die. Cambridge is treating them. I think it's actually once every 3 years. There's a bunch of there's an organic one. There's some discussion over what can be done. But the other way to look at it is, the cost of doing nothing is quite high, because it costs about say $500 to $700 per tree to remove a tree. So if you have roughly 1,000 trees, that'd probably be a $500,000 removal cost if they all die. which was what would happen. And then presumably residents would want new trees planted, which could be another $500 to $700 per tree. So by spending $30,000, I think that my recollection then was that we'll be on sort of this money will stay in the budget. I mean, if there's money available, and we'll be on like a 4-year cycle where we could do, or 3 or 4 year cycle where we could potentially do all of the trees every third year.
All of the street trees?
All of the street trees, all of the street trees,
Okay, are there any other questions on this? Alan?
Not on trees, but I'm just curious why how the historic sculpture maintenance ended up in the natural resources budget. It seems like a CPA and historic commission and things like that.
I think because they're in parks.
Because they're in parks?
I once knew the answer to that, Alan. When it first came into this budget, I said to whoever the DPW director was, I said, why is it in this budget? But I'm getting old and I can't remember what was said to me years ago.
If nothing else, I would think the maintenance of plaques or sculptures is a different skill set than trees.
Yes, it is. I know
I'm
that.
sure they
And
contract
the
out.
directors have always said that. So I have a vague recollection that the town manager said, here, it's in your budget.
Okay.
But I don't remember. I do remember asking that question when
Okay.
it first hit this budget.
Then please don't say you're getting old.
I am.
Well, none of the rest of us are.
Okay, any,
So I did have a question.
okay, John?
Did Mike give you any feedback on how much it cost to water a tree this year?
No, we didn't ask that.
No, not how much it costs to water a particular tree, but just, we were pretty careful about determining that he had a plan for making sure that all new trees planted were watered, and he understands they have to be watered on some level for 3 years, and that he's allocating in his budget enough money to do that for all the trees that he plants. And then we discussed with him Steve Nesrack's plan, and sort of were starting to say, hey, are you guys coordinating? And it sounded to me like they were making a coordinated effort to make sure that any new trees planted on town property that either are part of a capital project or are the DPW doing tree replacement. And at the moment, they're trying to expand. They're trying to go from 200 trees a year, which is just flat replacement, to 300 trees a year, so that we're actually increasing the tree canopy in the town. And so that between the two of them, they are going to make sure that new trees are watered. And right at the moment, he feels like his loss rate is about 5%. So that seems reasonable to me. I would assume 5% of trees fail because they fail. And then another interesting thing that he said about trees, because mostly that's what we talked about here was trees, is that they, for a long time, had a tree removal backlog, but they've cleared a great deal of it, and they're hoping to clear the rest of it shortly, and then to get on a proactive schedule of examining, pruning, and maintaining, and checking themselves for trees that need to be removed. Sort of like trash route by trash route through the town, which is really a huge improvement over what has been a completely complaint-driven system. So all the words about trees were pretty exciting. I mean, even the fact that he's paying attention to ash borers before we've seen one seems pretty cool to me.
Alan?
John, you were involved in the tree inventory, I believe, right?
I wrote the grant, I managed the people, and I wrote the tree management plan.
Okay, what's going on with it now? Is it being maintained? Is it being used by natural resources?
Well,
Yes.
so there was a little item in the capital plan commission, which was a $10,000 GIS to town web QA line item in the IT budget. And the reason that's there is because right now it's 2 databases, and a request comes in from a citizen, and it's in one database, and then we have this tree management plan, which is another database. And it's often very difficult to know. A resident says, I want this tree fixed. But finding that on a different map is not easy, because the resident will say, the 1-2 down from me, or the one on the corner, and the big one. And then you're looking at a GIS map that you can't figure it out, and the tree warden goes out and can't figure it out, what it is. And so ideally you want the tree inventory to be updated. When we remove a tree, it should be removed. And when we prune a tree, when we treat it for emerald ash borer, we should have a way to know that we treated that tree for emerald ash borer. But to do that, you would have to do data entry twice. So in this IT budget, I believe they're going to be able to have a pointer that a resident could use, or a tree maintainer could use, and mark the actual tree in the GIS so that you could continuously update and have the inventory be a living, ongoing document and not be static. But that requires more time, because so far it's mostly been static.
Good, I'm glad to hear that it's being used, because I know a lot of work went into it.
Yeah.
I'm glad there's a plan at least to get it updated.
Yeah.
Okay. Carolyn, you don't have to be punished. You can have a seat down over here.
I'm just, because of the camera, I'm not walking past it, because that's where the center is. So you're saying that'll be in the IT budget this year?
We approved it, some money for capital.
Oh, so it'll be under capital, not under operating? Yeah, okay. Because we're meeting with the IT director tomorrow morning.
Something that's interesting to me, if you ask, because there's other departments that need this.
Yeah.
Like, knowing where something is really important. I was walking through the St. Paul Cemetery, and the town police person who does animal control was driving around in circles because somebody said there were 2 dead raccoons but didn't know where it was. And so we're paying this person to drive around, whereas if somebody, whoever complained had put it on a map, we would have saved all that time. And I know the tree warden wastes a lot of time because we don't have geotagged data, and the same is true with sidewalks. With a lot of stuff is not geotagged.
Okay, any other questions on the natural resources? Okay, the motion's been made and seconded for $1,701,289 for natural resources. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous? 313.
The next budget is the maintenance of town fields. For those who are new or who don't, like me, tend not to remember, DPW ponies up $50,000 for maintaining the town fields, and Parks and Rec comes up with the rest of the money. I think they take it out of user fees. So we moved that the town fields budget of $50,000 be approved.
What page is that on?
It's on page
86.
just before you get to engineering.
Oh, there it is, sorry.
So,
I'll second the motion.
Question.
Yes, John?
so the 50,000 covers, you said what percentage of the cost?
Oh, it's at least 50%. No, I take that back. It's no more than 50%. I think Parks and Rec puts in more than DPW.
They do. Parks and Rec, and then Parks and Rec get, then there are user fees that.
The Parks and Rec get their user fees, and they use that revenue to maintain the fields, and the DPW puts in $50,000 worth of from their budget to maintain the fields.
So
the town-
user fees are paying about 50% or something
I think
more
more than 50%.
More than.
Yeah.
So the town will, the rec department assesses the youth sports groups $10 per player per season. And so if you have, I know that the soccer club pays by themselves $38,000. And so you add baseball and lacrosse and some of the other outdoor sports, and you're probably quickly over 50. And then they're going to increase the fee in the fall.
Okay, any other questions? Grant?
This isn't just only ball fields or just fields, or what's, is it like?
Playing fields, is my understanding.
Just on fields, not the rink or anything, right?
Nope.
Playing. So-
But it's also the play, like I know Waldo Park is maintained, it isn't a playing field, but is maintained by this outside contractor. I think the other playgrounds, like somebody comes and mows Waldo Park and it's an
Yeah,
outside
that-
contractor that's managed by the Parks Department. Is that different than this maintenance of town fields?
I think it is.
I think it is, but I don't.
I mean, we're probably talking playing fields, not
Right.
toddler parks.
Yeah.
So playing fields have a very different maintenance profile than just a grassy area in a park. And it's more than just maintenance, it's gotta go on with them. They also have to be.
Sure.
And so on and so forth. We used to do that on our resort.
Okay, other questions, Carolyn?
So is most of that 50,000 just maintenance of their equipment that they're lending to Parks and Rec and maybe use
No,
of
I
some
think
of their
they're,
staff?
I think the DPW is either doing the work itself or is helping to pay for whatever
Outside.
their
Okay. Yeah.
contracted services or company does it.
Okay, any other questions? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded for $50,000 for field maintenance. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Action. Okay.
Next is the engineering budget on page 88. There's a bit of a jump in salaries and wages. That is due to, there's a increase in a grade and a step for an employee, plus contractual increases. The other major item in the engineering budget is in expenses. There's a new item called mobility improvements, 5355. There's a large budget for $80,000. This is to fund what's called the Sustainable Mobility Plan that is, the goal is to develop a policy for the town and making, to help the town make decisions in how people can get around the town better, either by car, by bike, by foot. Much of the work, it was explained to us, will be headed by the head transportation planner in the planning department, whoever that person is, with DPW, working with that department, and perhaps also beginning to implement some of the recommendations that come out of this study, this plan. What else, Annie?
I think you got the gist of it. And it really is about multimodal ability to move around. So it's not like some big bike project or something like that. It really is about everything. How do we make it easier for people to use their chosen road to get around? Both make streets more pedestrian friendly, standardize what kind of traffic calming we'll put into a neighborhood where neighbors say, hey, cars are racing through my neighborhood. Help make sure that the major roads are all flowing freely, so on and so forth. So I think it's actually a really good sort of transportation mode agnostic idea. And it'll be interesting to see what comes out of it.
So what is the money going to be spent on?
It's gonna be spent on, my understanding is that there's gonna be some contracted work to pay people to go out to actually look and measure and conduct some type of study of all of these modes and make recommendations and start implementing what makes sense.
So this $80,000 is, they have a plan for how to spend the $80,000, or they
No,
just conjure up a number? I don't mean to be obtuse about it.
Yeah, I don't know how
Yeah.
they came up with the number 80,000, although the director did tell us that there was a similar project in another place.
I believe Cambridge did a plan like this, and we're gonna steal from it. So, you know, Mike was pretty impressed with the Cambridge plan. Thought they had done a really good job of figuring out this problem, basically.
Okay, Charlie?
Yes, John, I just want to make an observation. It's not easy to change roads and sidewalks or whatever to solve this problem, even if you have people with good ideas, because the state and the highways have different, and byways have different rules and regulations about clearances and what type of materials you have to use and so forth. So the whole planning process is very complicated.
So they would
Al?
hire somebody to help them do this, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah.
I believe,
Good.
you know, it could be a variety of consultants, but the
Yeah.
transportation guy in the planning department would lead that effort, so, you know, hopefully he knows what he's doing.
So this is a one-time?
Yeah, that was my question.
I would not guarantee, given that it's showing up in an operating budget, that this is one time. Once there's a plan, then there may be some ongoing effort to implement pieces of the plan.
This reflects a little bit to what Dean was saying before about
Yeah.
hiring consultants. One of the justifications for hiring a transportation planner in the planning department was to not spend so much darn money on consultants. And it was, again, we hire someone who should be doing this,
Yes.
but now we're gonna have them hire a consultant to actually do the work.
Well, my understanding is it's not simply just consulting, but you actually need legs to go out and actually look and observe and do the measuring and do the testing and so you need that, you need those bodies to actually help get the data that would drive, that would inform the.
Okay, we have many volunteers out there doing traffic counts through TAC and whatever. And, people sitting out on the roads with clickers and whatever. I don't know, I just hope that's all being coordinated.
This is for disability, like curb cuts and...
No,
No, I'm sorry.
No, it's much more general than that. This is really about examining everything in town and setting some standards. I mean, the example that Mike led with was, parents on a side street asking for speed bumps to slow the traffic down on their street. We don't have a standardized way to make that decision that we can communicate to folks. Now, of course, TAC knows that, right? And TAC already applies some standards. The idea is to sort of beef that up, not just for decisions about things like traffic calming, but for all kinds of modes of traffic that we want to encourage, discourage, whatever. So it's sort of a plan similar to the tree plan or similar to the master plan. It's a planning for how do we help people move around town in the best, most efficient way, and then make sure our infrastructure meets those needs. And that's why I don't want to say that there will never be another $80,000 request in the operating budget, because a plan implies an implementation on some level, so.
So I unfortunately won't be able to be here Monday with TAC's here, but could somebody ask TAC if they agree that this is a good expenditure?
I will make sure to
because
ask TAC
they have a
that
lot of
question.
credibility.
Absolutely, I will make sure to ask them that question.
Okay, other questions? John and then Carolyn.
Could you explain to me where the offsets come from?
Water and sewer, and that is grants?
Oh, yes, yes. We'll explain that later, address that more. So basically, they perform a certain amount of water and sewer work, and so that they get paid out of the water and sewer budget. A portion of their salaries get offset by the water and sewer.
90% of the time, if you see an offset, it's water and sewer.
Okay. Are there other, so the building department has fees, like you do a building inspection, right? the engineering department goes out and evaluates curb cuts when somebody does development. Are there fees that this department collects for curb cuts? It's, no. Do other towns charge for that?
If there's fees, I would think it's through the building department.
Who would you charge?
What's that?
Who would you charge a fee for?
If I want to expand my driveway and I need the town to come out and cut the curb for me,
That's not what our funded curb cuts are. The curb cuts are for handicapped people.
okay, well, but the town is doing curb cuts for developers. I admit, maybe it's paid through some other way, but the town goes out and says, you can, because they've got to look at, like, can we do a curb cut here? Is there a tree here? Is there a hydrant here? And then they come out and they do the curb cut. So I'm wondering if somebody gets paid for that, who gets paid for that?
My guess would be the building inspector.
Yeah.
I think the engineering department basically provides services to other parts of the town. Mostly water and sewer. Carolyn?
So this is another, like the Arts Council, this is a line item I'd like you to watch over the next couple of years. And like understand what they're using it for, how much time is being spent on consultants, how much time is being spent on temp help, you know, to do that kind of work that you're talking about. Because it's starting, as somebody mentioned about hiring the consultants, it's starting to sound like the transportation person is turning into a project manager and finding lots of fun projects to get others to work with. And I'm, just throwing that out there, but I get very concerned the more graduates we hire, with people with graduate degrees we hire at very high salaries, and then increase their budgets by tens of thousands of dollars for things like this. So that's my 2 cents.
Any other questions, discussion? Okay, is your motion as printed?
As printed.
A second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Good for you. Good. He
All
likes to
the-
do that.
All those in favor, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Opposed?
What the hell?
Abstain? No, okay. Okay, next budget.
Can I ask a question I should have asked under natural resources, but forgot to? I think it's important enough. When we last year came to the Finance Committee to get money for additional tree planting from 200 a year to 300 a year, the Finance Committee approved another $30,000 or $25,000, I can't remember exactly. And the plan was that Mike would also use $25,000 from the McEachern bequest, which is a $150,000 fund for tree planting in town. Now, he may not have needed to do that because when we had made the request, we were anticipating private outside contractors to do planting, which would be considerably more expensive than the way that Mike was able to do it. But there is this $150,000 fund which has been there for 5 or 6 years and has very little that's been spent of it. So I'm curious to know if McEachern is M-A-C, real not good at spelling, Mac, and then capital E-A-R-C-H-E-R-N. So I'm wondering if he used any of that money, because that, that, like, planting a tree, like, if you have an arts budget, maybe you want to have arts over 25 years, but the best time to plant a tree is 25 years ago. So there's no advantage to not, using it. So.
We'll find out what we can ask.
Okay, next.
Public Works Admin on page 92. This budget is pretty much level funded, except for contractual wage increases. I had a concern about overtime, what it was being, why we needed it in Public Works admin, and why we had a budget of $8,800. And it was explained that and I confirmed this as well, that in previous years it had been as high as $10,000, and much of that was because of costs associated with the community recycling collection efforts. But that has been reorganized in a way that we are seeing successfully that overtime is being whittled away, and he expects that this will really be under control pretty shortly, so that's good news. But that will be something that we'll watch going forward. But other than that, there's really not much else to report on this budget, and we recommend the budget be approved as printed.
Second?
Second.
Questions? Charlie?
So I think I ask this question every year, but I'll ask it again, and that is, you know, we put, some years ago, when Brian Sullivan was town manager, we put the recycling coordinator in this budget. And the idea was that this position was going to pay for itself. And I remember specifically, they cited white goods collection and payment, you know, fees for washing machines and stuff like that gets collected. And so just a general question, as you went through this department, I don't know whether it's in administration or somewhere else, how much are we getting in terms of revenue from recycling, and what is it paying for in the department, if anything?
I know what the balance in the recycling revolving fund is, and I know what the balance has been in that account for several years. Right now, the balance is $48,900.
$48,000?
$48,900, and last year was like $52,000. So that seems more or less to be staying in that $50,000 range.
And what's the source of the funds that go?
The scrap metal and orange bags sale.
And so the 35,000 comes from that fund?
Which is less than 60.
The offset?
Yes.
In offsets.
Peter?
The town gets a substantial amount of money from the state to run, because of all the good stuff we do in recycling. Does that appear here somewhere?
No.
No, probably
Grants from the state? No.
What?
Are you talking about grant money?
I guess they're grants, right?
Yeah, it wouldn't show up in this budget.
I would say that, and we could probably get some numbers for you on this, Charlie, that recycling has caused a huge drop in our collection and disposal costs. So some of that income isn't income, some of what the recycling coordinator has done for us isn't income, it's reduction in cost.
And negotiate with the vendor.
It's partly negotiating with the vendor, but it's also getting people to recycle, right?
Less trash. So,
Yes.
yeah.
So,
well,
you know,
I mean,
if the
the
recycling-
recycle has to go someplace, so.
Yes, but remember, we don't, for the moment, and this will all change in 3 years, for the moment, we don't pay for the recycling to be picked up and hauled away. And we don't pay for it to be disposed, okay? Now, we don't get anything for it either. The trash collector
Right,
gets to
we
sell
used to
it.
get paid for it, now we don't.
Right.
Yes.
However, Dean's gonna correct me if I'm wrong here, however, if I'm throwing out 1,000 pounds worth of stuff a year and half of it is in my recycling, I'm saving you the cost, I'm saving the town the cost of
Tipping fees.
disposing of that $500, 500 pounds worth of stuff. So that's where the recycling coordinator is paying off, by helping me, the citizen, understand all the things that I can recycle and making sure I do that and so on and so forth, by marketing the idea. Again, the piper's gonna come home in a couple of years because of the collapse of the market, but for the moment.
Yeah, that's sort of where I was headed, is that I think China has stopped taking
Yes.
Right.
a lot of recycling
Yes.
materials, including newspapers, among other.
Yes.
And so, I don't know what's happening to it, but maybe we're escaping it because of the contract, but sooner or later,
Exactly.
it's gonna come back.
Right, and Mike discussed that in our meeting, and he also pointed out that the other sort of stream of waste that costs us a lot of money that we're now working on diverting is compostables. And so what he's hoping to do over the 3 years where we have this reprieve from the collapse of the recycling market because we got a contract is to figure out both with our trash hauler and by doing experiments like the collection bins that he's got out there now and figuring out some curbside program to help more people divert their food waste to being collected and composted, and he's hoping that we will gain back some of what we're going to lose. He's predicting that recycling in the future will cost us several $100,000 a year instead of it being picked up for free. So he's working on other streams he can divert and get out of, because we pay by the pound for collection and
Just
disposal.
keep in mind that composting is sort of a rat buffet.
It
No, it's
is
not.
if you do it in your own backyard, but it is not if, and I do this, if you hired a service and you put a bin out just like your trash every week and you
Somebody
pick it up
else's
and take
backyard.
it away.
They have
Somebody
bear,
else's backyard.
rest of bear proof the bins, the town.
Okay.
The town's
This
bins are
subject-
bare.
This subject will come up in another budget.
Yeah,
this
sorry.
budget,
Right.
so if we can go deal with this, the public admin, then we can talk about this.
Okay,
in
Dean, did you have
ways.
something to add?
Yeah, I was gonna say, so, I think Charlie, part of your question was, so when we created the recycling coordinator position, we had a contract where we got money, like I'm gonna call it rebate money from the
Right.
hauler. And we put it in this white goods fund that got approved at town meeting, and that paid for the position. Subsequent to that, and I was pulling up the memo here, town had entered into an agreement where instead of getting separate rebate money, it was built into the contract for, trash hauling. And so like Annie said, it just went through there. And so we don't actually get the money anymore to fund the position directly.
Okay, are there any other questions on Public Works admin?
Oh, can I say one more thing, by the way, because I just looked at it, I have it here. So our contract for our Armageddon date on recycling, when we're gonna probably be in trouble with everyone else, is July 2022. We have a little bit of runway still on that one.
There's a lot of bad things happening then. Okay, motion's been made and seconded for $227,160. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, unanimous.
The next budget is highways on page 96. We have a couple of employees with some step increases, but other than that, the increase in the salaries and wages line are based on contract increases. This budget, this is the budget that handles our streets, our sidewalks, our drains, our street sweeping, oversees solid waste, and much of it is project-based and also weather-based. The only, the one new thing in this budget is, I think it's similar to natural resources, that we have a new item called small equipment, which is to pay for things that used to be put in the capital budget. In the highway department budget, small equipment will relate to the cost of high-wear power tools like chainsaws and drills and compactors. That's what the $5,000 is for.
Okay, so are you recommending as printed?
We are.
Second.
Second.
Questions? Discussion? Now, Alan, sorry.
In the previous override, there was the $400,000 a year sort of set aside for highway work. Is that on capital?
Yes.
Okay, so it's not reflected.
It's in one of those offset lines,
Okay.
and that essentially transfers it from the general fund to the capital.
Okay.
John?
This is just my ignorance, but there's a bunch of vacant positions here, and I know in fiscal year last year, there were quite a few vacant positions in forestry. So did the non-spent money on those salaries get rolled back to the capital, to the general fund, or did Mike spend, how is Mike using the funds from vacant positions that were vacant for like the whole year and he didn't need the money for? Is it going back to the general fund or money?
You want me to take a crack at that? So we didn't ask him specifically to account for that, but the general thing that happens with that money is that sometimes it's going into overtime budgets. That particularly happens in public safety when they've got, you know, people that have higher debt. Another place it can usually be spent is on contractual or temp employees. If that is the way to get some work done, it has to absolutely be gotten done. But if there are savings, it rolls to free cash. Correct, Al? It would roll to free cash.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And did DPW return any free cash to?
Yeah, I mean, the controller keeps track of it, and any funds that are unencumbered and unspent as of June 30th it goes back to the general fund.
Oh, so when we look at budgets, nobody tells us this.
No.
I mean, we just see the big number of free cash and we just say vote over, but we never get to see, like.
I could ask for that tomorrow when I meet with the comptroller. I could ask
You
them
could,
to run a report.
you could get whatever you want,
Yeah.
just gotta ask the question.
Mhm.
So.
That is a good question.
It's,
for personnel vacancies.
So there's a turnback report. Unfortunately, I don't have it with me, but it'll show each budget and the balance left at the end, the amount encumbered and the amount turned back. And, you know, they can't overspend the budget, so almost every budget, except very small ones, will turn back some money.
Except that you would hope to see them turning back the majority of the vacancy money, salary money, unless they can account for it in contract or temp, work.
Right. I mean,
Or overtime.
I think the difficulty for us is that what we see is budget to budget. We're not
Right.
actually looking at all of the actuals.
Mhm.
I think a lot of the actuals you can see through the website. I don't know about specifically the
Well,
turnbacks.
but I'm the one doing the contractor, the comptroller's budget, so I can ask for that.
Yes, no, obviously we can ask
Yeah,
for the
so-
turnbacks, but I don't know if you can get a straight line comparison of like how much money was not spent in salaries and maybe.
Maybe,
Right.
yeah, I'll ask.
Right.
But
We can
I
ask.
also think it's downloadable from the website. I mean, through the open checkbook application. So,
I mean, you've got 2 years of actuals right there.
yes.
So in the highway, their actuals, say for fiscal 18, they spent $1,530,000. So if you go back to the actual budget, you can figure out how much was turned back. Because these amounts, by the time we get to them, these would include the encumbrances. Because encumbrances need to get spent fairly quickly. They can't just encumber them forever. Dane?
It's going to be really small to see. On page 87 of the town's annual financial statements provides a reconciliation to the budget that was approved by town meeting to the final amount that was expended by each department. And right in the middle of this sheet is Public Works broken out by salaries and expenses, which is going to make you nauseous if I start reading it, so I will email it to everybody.
Thank you.
Now, which report is that in?
Right.
It's in the CAFR.
And I can
Okay.
ask
Which
tomorrow.
is, we attend,
Good find.
Right.
it's somewhat interesting to me that they returned some amount, but it's a
Right.
lot more interesting to me if they had $200,000 that was budgeted to be spent, none of the positions were filled, but they're only returning $25,000. That's
But
what's
you can't
interesting.
assume it wasn't filled for the whole year. This says a vacant position when they were making up this budget. That doesn't mean the position hasn't been already filled.
No, but I know
Or
about
wasn't
the
filled up until
I realize
November.
that, but I know about the forestry department, and I know that there were positions that were for long periods not.
And this happened in another department a number of years ago, and the department head came out and said that they had saved the town lots of money, except that there were 3 or 4 vacancies, and what he was doing was returning part of the vacancy salaries, not all of it, and that's what he was calling as a savings.
Well, if it's not spent by the end of the year, he has to return all of it back.
Well, what he was doing was using the vacancy salaries on other
Okay.
items.
Okay,
It's a
Charlie?
way to increase your
I have
budget.
another question that maybe somebody that used to work in the Treasury Department might be able to answer. But,
He's so subtle.
so,
Who could that
so
be?
the Public Works Department has probably the largest collection of offsets because of the water sewer activity. And I know that the town audits the offset numbers periodically. Does anybody know when the last time it was audited and when the next time it's gonna be audited? In other words, you know, how much each of these departments actually spend on water and sewer?
The last time we did an allocation study was when Powers and Sullivan did it, several years ago. And that was sort of a formal process of saying, these are the water sewer offsets and whatnot. After that, it's internally administered by, I think Sandy and the comptroller will do it. And then, if you recall, we've had this before, correct me if I'm wrong, but the current year's offset represents last year's allocation, because the concept behind it is that the current year budget, both in the general fund and the enterprise funds, are subject to change. So you don't want to create budgetary anarchy by trying to do them 1 year at a time. So they do so this year's offsets are last year's allocations for water and sewer. Do it 1 year in arrears on the allocation. So it's actually easier to look at if you ever wanted to dig into, because the allocation is based on real numbers that they had spent last year.
So what you're saying is an accounting of their actual labor cost spent in various activities, tracked by project.
Correct. So last year, the Treasury's Department's always easier because there's one person there who does water and sewer billing, so you're just allocating the entire amount and whatever percent of the budget is. The work is done 1 year, and the allocation comes on the next year. That way, if you're not getting a situation if there's a vacancy, you're not like pulling money out and things like that.
Thank you.
Any other questions on highways? Okay, the motion's been made and seconded for $1,750,434. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous? 313. Christine?
The next one is snow and ice on page 98, and we are recommending a different number for this account. Just to give people a history of how we've been handling this budget. Snow and ice is the only budget where a city or town can deficit spend. And years ago, Arlington used to do what every other city and town, or most still do, which is drastically underfund, knowing that what they budget for isn't even close to what they'll have to spend, because you can do that. The state says you can do that. I think like the second year I was on the finance committee, we decided that was not a very good strategy to take. So we decided that we were going to bump up incrementally this budget to get to the point where we're about 75 to 80% of our 10-year rolling average. Last year, this time last year, we were at about 80%. And then somehow this happened as we were doing the budget book for town meeting. I think we had a couple of $1,000s left over, and we said, let's just throw it in snow and ice. And that's how we got this number last year. That bumped us up a little bit more than 80%. So what the 2020 budget is even more than that. If we approve what's written in this budget book, we'll be around like 83–85% of our rolling 10-year average. I think that's too high, because we can only deficit spend so long as we budget at least what we budgeted the year before. So we can never we can never lower that. So it's better that we always stay under what we expect to pay or incur. So I feel, and Annie agrees, that it's safer to budget what we budgeted last year and leave it at that. And whatever is left over in the money available for DPW, my suggestion would be to throw it into our reserve.
Okay, so you're recommending 1,172,013?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. And that number would be, do you think, about 80%?
About 80%, 81%
Okay.
of our.
Okay, so is that your
our
motion?
10-year average.
Is that your motion?
That's my motion.
Second?
Second.
Okay, motion's made and seconded. Discussion. John?
What are the advantages of deficit spending as opposed to just trying to fund the 100% and if you go under and roll it back as free cash?
We don't, well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
What?
No, I was about to answer it, but go ahead.
But,
You should.
if we budget for it, we can't, that money isn't free to use for any other purpose. So we may not use $1.1 million this year or next year. So we'll be sitting on this pile of money. And that's why many cities and towns don't even bother to
When you say
budget,
sit
because
on
it
it,
frees
so
up this
it
money.
wouldn't go back into the general fund as free
Yeah,
cash?
but it won't be available this year.
I was about to add, we don't deficit spend because if it goes over this amount, we use the reserve fund. And we've been increasing the size of the reserve fund over the last number of years too. So between this amount and the reserve fund, we'll cover it. So we don't deficit spend anymore on snow and ice. It's just we have two pots.
And what is the advantage of having two pots as opposed to, is it just the flexibility of having more money available now than next year?
There's the other factor of us not being able to lower it at some point that plays into the decision-making.
Right.
Yeah, that's what she's mentioning. But it's, so we appropriate for snow and ice based on the target that Christine says, and then we cover the rest with reserve fund. The reserve fund we can use for anything. Well, almost anything. Charlie?
So we have to hope that the rate of inflation is higher than the increase in global warming.
That's right.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, we used to deficit spend, we used to allocate in this 5-year plan, we used to have at least 500,000 allocated, 500 to 700,000 allocated to cover the last year's deficit.
Snow and ice deficit.
So we don't do that anymore. We pay our bills when they're due with current year monies.
Another question.
John?
The 2017, 2018 actual were almost exactly the same, within $100. But the categories were different. Is that important, or
I think the 2018 actual is just more specific. I think the overtime, I think the overtime and the 5103 and 5279 was the old, in 17, the 5279 amount. I'll put it this way, the 5236 line is contract, the people we hire, the contractors, the landscapers, people with plows. The other categories are what the town spends to buy product and for overtime for our own employees.
You finished, John?
Yep.
Okay, John?
I would guess that it would be overtime. You know, we just had a snowstorm this last Sunday. You know why? It eliminates the overtime line.
You mean in the budget?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
back in 18, there was 44,000.
But I don't think he can, I don't think he can predict the overtime.
Okay.
I mean, I think that would just be
Yeah.
a wild guess.
Just a little, okay.
Okay, Charlie?
So a couple of years ago, we were having trouble disposing of the snow, I guess is the word, whatever you do when it's piling up. Where are we disposing of the snow now?
That's a good question. I think we're still using the res.
And we rent the space from the church next to Poets Corner.
Right.
So you go over this big pound stick right now.
Fortunately, we haven't. I was about to knock on wood, but I don't know if we have any here. Okay, other questions on snow and ice? Okay, so the motion is for $1,172,013. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous, 313. Next.
Highway, motor equipment repair. This is the department that maintains our 150 or so vehicles. There is a bit of a jump in salaries and wages, and that is because of step increases. And there is a $4,500 increase in the 5202 line, which is, it's called maintenance. That's the pot of money that we use for specialty vehicle repairs that needed, things that we can't do in-house that we have to send out to do. And even with that increase, that budget is still within the range that budget has been for several years. So we recommend that the motor equipment repair budget be approved as printed.
Second.
Questions? Discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous? 13, okay?
The next budget is the budget we've already talked about, solid waste. The increase is contractual, driven by our collection and our disposal contracts.
Okay, excuse me, let me interrupt. Just a reminder now, whenever we change a line item, make sure Sandy knows, so we're all copacetic with each other. Okay.
The new item in solid waste is the food scrap diversion program. This is a new program that DPW wants to roll out further. There's already been an initiative in town. There are 3 places in town, disposal areas in town, where people who have been told about it have been disposing of their food scraps. And the idea is to reduce the amount of garbage we have to pay for to haul away and incinerate. The director says that the program's been pretty successful. There have not been problems with smells or animals. So the idea is to use this money to add more sites, more disposal sites in town. He is not expecting a curbside pickup of food scraps. And at least not at this point in time, although there are people in town who privately contract for that. So this money will be used to offset the costs of this pilot program. And for the reasons we've just we've been discussing tonight, there is a dire need for us to think of new strategies in terms of what we're doing with our waste. So we, Annie and I recommend that the solid waste budget be approved as printed.
Second?
Second.
Discussion, questions, John?
Just a quick one. The hazardous waste collection line, is that for our share of the Lexington household hazardous waste collection?
That is a good question. I don't know that. I don't know.
What was your question, John?
The line item hazardous waste collection. So we use Lexington's household hazardous waste collection program. So I'm just wondering if that's our share of the cost associated
Well,
with that.
we're charged by the number of cars that go from Arlington as a percentage of the cost of doing it, I believe.
Right. So that's what I'm just asking, is that what's showing here is the $35,000? Or is this something else?
No, that seems like.
I don't know, I presume it is.
I think that is our hazardous waste collection.
I
don't
know
think we do
that.
any on site,
I
so-
mean, as far as I know, that's
Yeah.
all we've got. So I'm just wondering if that's what's showing here, that's our cost to use
Yeah.
Lexington's
I mean,
program.
we can double check.
Yeah, we can confirm that.
But I believe that's what it is.
Grant?
Pat, this kind of sounds a little like a question I asked the water bodies folks, but in the diversion program, the 100,000, there any measurements in plan to see if we're actually offsetting, reducing the actual disposal fee, disposal amount by that amount, or?
That's a good question. It's made that developing that metric might be part of what this $100,000 is used for. It's a good question.
Or weigh, I mean, how does it weigh it, I mean, the whole process, they weigh each thing into curbside, I know this is 100 pounds, so we must be doing 100 pounds less to, meat incineration.
Yeah, so right now, that diversion program consists of these 3 containers in different locations, and I think what Mike wants to do first is to increase the number of these, walk up and dump your stuff containers, right? What's called FIDO. And then he talked about studying whether or not some kind of curbside collection program was the right thing to do. Okay, so like I privately contract for my food scraps that we picked up for $100 a year, and then I get compost in the spring. So I garden,
And
so it's a
it
good
has
deal.
nothing to do, you could do thousands of pounds, I mean, there's no relationship, you just pay $100.
No, I just pay
relationship.
$100. There's, I think that, I mean, it's a private company, they got a business model, they must have figured out something, and I get a little bit of compost back, but I think they're selling compost. I don't get as much compost back as I'm contributing waste, shall we say. So, and I know that that company.
You have to get down in the dirt to check that out.
Yeah, right.
So-
I know that particular company also contracts with some municipalities to run a curbside
Well, I
program for a
guess the
whole
point
town.
is, like, for instance, is 3 pots around, or 3 collection
Yes.
points, FIDOs,
Mhm.
whatever it is.
Yeah.
How often they go collected, how much is being collected, that kind of thing,
Yeah.
that's some sort of measurement like that, but I guess
I mean-
the question's sort of been answered, it's still a work in progress.
Yes,
Yeah.
but it's a great question, and so, I'm happy to follow up with Mike and ask him what his plan is about metrics, because
Where are the spots now, do you know?
one of them is at the rec center,
I don't know what else.
one of them is at the rec center, one of them is
Teal
somewhere in the center of town, yeah, the rec center. One of them is somewhere in the center of town, and one of them is in East Arlington, like
Teal
on that
Street,
street.
at Waldo
Teal Street.
Park.
Yeah,
Across
okay.
from the town manager's
The
house.
one in the center of town is at the DPW parking lot.
Yes, that's right. So
Actually,
anyway, so they're 3
I-
pretty, and all on public land.
And how long have they been there?
I want to say 6 months or a year, right?
So the best question to ask Mike, because he'll say there's a plan
Yeah.
no matter what, because of course there is.
Yeah.
How much has been collected so far?
Yes, and I have to imagine he knows that, because somebody's
I would
picking
think
it
so.
up and hauling it away, so.
I would think you would.
We can ask.
Mike mentioned this, and I had heard this myself as well a few weeks ago when I went to the MMA luncheon on recycling. This may be something that the state's gonna mandate us to do anyway. So it is a good idea for us to start exploring this when we can.
When I was at the EcoFest, they were giving out, I know they weren't giving them out, there's these small green plastic containers that you put in your kitchen. And he said they don't smell at all, and I simply did not believe that.
Oh, I
But
can tell you for a fact.
I've had it in my kitchen now for a while, unless I've gone nose blind. There's no smell to it at all, but on that. So, Charlie?
Yeah, I'm reaching back into my memory, but I recall seeing some studies of, and I think I actually vaguely remember sharing this with Peter about 5 or 6 years ago, that municipal solid waste is a lot heavier in cities than in suburbs because of the density of restaurants.
Yes.
In probably something like 50% of the waste in municipal solid waste is food waste.
Right.
And it's mostly, it's water.
Yep.
More or less. So I just wonder, and a big portion of the cost of the disposal is transportation as opposed to tipping, even though it's called a tipping fee. And so what is the savings from the composting if we have the same tonnage being transported?
I think it's similar to recycling in that the food waste is being collected and used by somebody as a product. They're creating compost and they're selling the compost.
Aren't we burning it for energy?
It's one or the other. Like, that is the other possibility, is to just get a biodigester and use it to produce power, right? And I think we've done some experiments with that at the schools or something along those lines. But those are the two things to do with compostable waste. Compost it, turn it into compost and sell the compost. And the other thing to do with it is to throw it in a biodigester and turn it into electricity. So somebody's doing one or the other with our food waste. And so we don't pay them to take it away because they're turning it into a product they can sell. Does that make sense? Sort of.
I don't know about the numbers. I think
Yeah.
it has to be looked at very closely.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is that I don't think Mike is paying to have those containers emptied.
It's a town truck that picks it up.
It is?
Yep.
All right, then we are paying to have it.
Well, where did they take it?
Into
No.
Right behind you, Jared.
It's not being burnt.
Right, maybe Hartwell Lab goes on digester.
Yeah, a digester or a compost.
It's being composted, yeah.
Grant?
So Charlie, I kind of share the moving, it's hard for anyone to answer because the moving pieces, we might just be creating more garbage anyway, so it's hard, it's never static. That's why I was thinking, well, maybe a number, whatever people are putting in these bins has to be reducing the tipping. Doesn't mean we're not creating more tipping by just consuming more food, but so that's why I thought, well, maybe that's some sort of measurement. And then what's our trend for tipping? Is our trend for tipping increasing? We're using more? I don't know. That's rhetorical. Are we using more? Are tipping fees increasing? Are we producing more trash this year than last year?
Well, usually it's a feature of economics, so of the economy.
Right, economy's one.
And we've got a contract on a certain amount of fees, so you're at least saving the solid waste disposal.
Of whatever it is that is in those bins, right?
And you're picking up 3 bins instead of the entire town. So
That part, I think, Charlie, that part's the sketchy numbers, but at least how it relates to the tipping, it would have to equate to that, because otherwise it wouldn't go there, I think is a good answer.
John?
Two related questions following up on what you said. So $100,000, does that buy 3 more of these composts or 30 more?
We didn't ask them that question.
And since, I imagine those look like they're probably pretty expensive, the bins, they're bear-proof. Is that a capital, should that be a capital expense? Because it's gonna be here for a number of years.
Yeah, I mean, when he says food scrap diversion programs, although he talked about expanding the number of those bins, he also talked about some other things. I think there's more detail in that. If y'all really want us to, we'll go back and we'll get a bunch of detail on this. Because this year, I'm not worried about the solid waste budget, but in 2022, I'm really worried about it.
Yeah, we're gonna have a huge problem on our hands budget-wise
Yeah.
in like 2 years. He said today that right now we don't pay any money to get rid of our recycling. If we didn't have that contract that says 0, it's estimated that we'd be paying $400,000 a year to get rid of our recycling. So I feel like this is money well spent to try to get our minds thinking about what is going to happen and what we're going to have to adjust to.
So if you could go back and just get a little bit, get more detail on it. Whose dumpsters are they? Who's picking them up? What's happening with them? Vendor, outside vendor versus that type of stuff.
Sure.
Sounds like the questions that are going. Okay, any additional questions? Okay, it's been moved and seconded for $3,889,875. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Favorable action, unanimous. 313.
Next is cemetery on page 104. There is a $50,000 increase in expenses in the 5202 line, and that is for repairs to burial vaults at Mount Pleasant. Because of that $50,000 increase in 5202, there was a corresponding increase in the offset to $200,000 up for $150,000. And last Monday we voted to use that offset for the cemetery fund, cemetery budget. So Annie and I recommend that the cemetery budget be approved as printed.
Seconded.
Okay. By chance, did they give you an update when we run out of space?
We didn't ask.
Didn't ask.
But the 50,000 is for vaults, so we're building up?
It sounded like it was for vault repair.
Oh, vault repair, okay.
Okay, other questions? Charlie?
What were the fund balances? I think we discussed that a little bit the other night.
Lots and graves, $591,847.39. That's 591,847.39. Perpetual care is $6,667,900.19. That's 6667900.19.
And the offsets are
200,000.
from
I
Lawson?
don't know which fund that was from.
I can't remember which we took it from last year, but it comes from one of them. One with your
10,000.
10,000.
According to Mike's notes, it's perpetual care.
Is it perpetual care?
Yeah, the 200,000 is our perpetual care.
Of those two fund balances, which is the 591,000 one?
Lots and graves.
What?
Lots and graves.
Thanks.
And is there a formula or a rationale for why the offset is set at a certain amount as opposed to just offsetting the total if you've got that kind of money in the balances?
You mean offsetting the total cemetery budget?
Yeah, how is the offset amount determined?
Charlie?
That's the way it's always been.
No, it's not the case.
Okay.
It has to do with what the work is. That they, I don't know, I can't describe the technical details, but in the fund itself, it says this money can be used for, scrubbing gravestones or planting trees or whatever, the cemetery work is. So a certain amount of that work is allowed to be paid for by one fund, and others allowed to be paid for by the other fund, and other work is not allowed to be paid by either one of them.
And that's paid from the general fund. Okay, John?
When you look at the town website, if you want to communicate with the cemetery department, the email goes to jsmith@townofArlington, but they don't employ anyone named J. Smith. Who would that be?
Well, there's a McMaster Smith. I don't know if that's the same Smith.
Which is the
Oh.
principal clerk and secretary.
Okay,
So
maybe
that's
so.
probably doing it.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions? Okay, motion's made and seconded for $268,389. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous? 13.
Next is street lighting on page 108. And that budget is level funded.
Is that your motion?
That's our motion.
Second?
Second.
When this is where technology has really had an impact, because I can remember, boy, am I dating myself, this budget was over $500,000.
Yep.
So it's kept putting in new lights and new lights and new lights and brought it down. Carolyn?
I was gonna ask about the LED lighting, so has all the LED lighting, have all of the lights been replaced with
Yeah.
LED? Okay, so they have.
Grant?
Crosswalks, I am of the opinion that some of our crosswalks are pretty poorly lit, particularly the one in front of Town Hall. But there are some others along the way on Mass Ave that sure would be nice if they were just a little bit better, particularly the crosswalks. Is there any way that they can separate that, or like just do that for those particular lights, like to buy each particular light where they can increase the light of that?
I think it's a reasonable question. The reason I say that is because I know neighbors who have said, it's dark here. And they just get on the phone and call the town manager and say, can we put in a street light? And it has happened. No, I think we just need to make a request, and they would at least consider it.
Wait a minute, one at a time. Charlie, then David.
So, I think you'll notice in the warrant this year, there is another article trying to restrict the amount of lighting that the town puts out, or that people can put out. So I think there's a conflict there.
Yeah.
That's the lighting going up.
As opposed to the lighting going down.
Well, any lighting that goes down also goes up.
David?
I just want to get, going back to finding the first question. Years ago, the crosswalk in front of the town hall had a special light. And it was across the street, and you reached up and you pulled it on when there was any type of function going on at the town hall, including town meeting. And when the function was over, they go back out. That was there for years until they remodeled the center and did away with that light.
They should
And that's
put
why
that
it's
back
down
in.
now.
Okay, John?
Need to have it back.
Mary and I were walking out at the town hall one evening, and there was a guy coming down Massachusetts Avenue, another car right behind him. They were quite a way away, but they were going probably a bit too fast. We got out into the street, and this guy slammed on his brakes, and the guy behind him rear-ended him right in front of him. I felt really guilty about it, but it was because he couldn't see us.
The one who should feel guilty is the one behind who wasn't leaving enough distance. Okay, Annie?
I just want to say that other than putting a light on the crosswalk, there are other techniques for making those crosswalks work better and be more, there's reflective paint, there's little lights embedded in the street, so on and so forth. So I think the way to go about this is to pose it as a problem and not as a solution. So, when one of us calls Mike about food waste diversion, we can always ask whether he has a plan to soup up the crosswalks.
That sounds reasonable. Brian?
Traffic Advisory Committee's coming in on Monday. That's the people to ask.
Okay. I'll expect that you ask that question.
We'll try and meet those then.
Okay. Any other questions on street lighting? Okay, motion's been made and seconded for 105. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous?
And lastly, we have traffic signals on page 109. That $15,000 increase in maintenance 5202 is intended to address deferred maintenance with painting on the traffic signal equipment. And Annie and I recommend that the budget be approved as printed.
Okay, moved and seconded for 115,000. Questions? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous? I think you're done.
Done.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
But did you want to talk about DPW some more?
Keep from going off the note that didn't sound wonderful.
Okay, so, Finance Committee's done, Manager's done, Selectmen's done. Now we have most of the controller,
Yeah,
We have
controller.
to do parking. Parking?
No.
the parking,
Budget and district if you like.
okay. Do you have,
I'm gonna go back to abstaining. Yeah.
You ran part.
I just want to know whether water and sewer didn't go down when your budget went down.
Yeah.
Not there anymore.
what page?
Page 68.
Okay,
Okay, there is a couple of there's a couple of changes on this schedule. If you look to account number 5236, it's budgeted at 36,300. That's changing to 5,000.
wow.
That's a big change.
We found a little double up.
I'm sorry, can you
Okay, so
repeat that again?
that line 5236 is now 5,000.
Okay, so how did that happen?
That happened because they were, in those services were included items that were in the parking district as well.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
Nice.
Okay,
You can thank Charlie for that. That's 3 attaboys.
you get 10%, right?
Okay, also in conjunction with that, now here's the bad news. The offset, which is also from the parking district, is reduced to 36,314. So the bottom line on the, if you want the total parking expenses is now, that's, the total expenses are 20,780. The parking appropriation total is 95,333. And the total on the bottom line is 59,019. And I would move that we accepted that amount, 59,019.
Second.
Okay. Questions? Annie?
So we are paying part of the salaries with the offset?
The offset is paying part of these parking salaries, correct?
Okay, so the
So
offsets are.
this money is coming from the parking district
Yep.
to pay for, to supplement some of the expenses. Because there are other parking issues in town besides the meters and the
Yes.
parking district.
So the offsets are the parking district?
Correct.
Okay.
But I just note that the line is now less than what we're spending on salaries. Your bottom.
No, your salaries are 74,000.
Maybe I misheard the number, but the after offsets number is less than the salaries now.
Yes.
Yes, yeah. So part of the salary is being paid by the parking
Absolutely.
district. Got it.
Okay, any other
Can
questions?
you tell me the expenses numbers again?
The total expenses, which was 52,000,
Yeah,
is now 20,780.
20,000, so. Okay, it's 15,780, 25,000.
Do you need the other one, or you're okay?
No, it's good.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah,
John?
another question of my ignorance. Where do parking tickets, how much do we collect in parking tickets money? How does
I
that-
don't have this year's number. Last year was about 600,000, 600,000 to 700,000. But that's, I'm sorry, actually, you got the treasurer right
Yeah,
here. He might know.
Go over it.
He's right. All-time record, I will point out. One consecutive kills ever.
This budget, that enforcement is in the police budget, though,
Correct.
not here.
Correct.
So that's offsetting the police budget.
So all the money comes into the parking district, part goes here to offset some of this, part goes to police, the rest is spent on the district. And you'll notice the town's vicious way of encouraging you not to duck the meters. Because I was going down to go meeting at the town hall, and all by Whole Foods, the ice and snow are all out. So when you get to the place with the parking meters, it's all cleared right to the curb. So if you want the good snow clearance, you've got to pay for it.
Follow-up question. If we spent more on this department, would we collect more money?
No.
No.
This is just administration.
Okay.
Yes, we spent more on parking enforcement
In
in
the
the police budget. I believe, at least Fred Ryan was very well aware of. And
It's the guy running around in the little smart, electric smart car.
With a tan suit.
Yeah.
I know them a little too well.
yeah, me too.
Yeah, because he's always taking my spot in the Russell Common.
Your spot?
My spot, I charged my car there. And there he is.
There's one right behind Town Hall.
Yeah, I haven't quite gotten the nerve to use that one yet. Might tick off the owner of that spot. Okay, it's 59,019. Are there any further questions? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous? Other budgets?
We have the parking district.
We have to vote, we're supposed to approve the parking district allocations.
Okay. Do we have that, though?
I emailed that out last week, everybody should have received it. I'm sorry, I should say, what was the last time I had it?
Leave my phone.
Does everybody have it? I don't remember getting it, but...
I remember getting it in the system. I didn't get it.
Okay, why don't, it gets fairly complex. Why don't we do it first thing
Okay,
on Monday?
maybe I sent it to Liz, it's possible.
And she's been out this week.
Yeah.
It's not that complex. It's complex because they made it complex. It's not, it is not complex, but it'll take 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
Okay.
Whenever we do it, so.
Okay, are there any other budgets for tonight? Now, on Monday, we'll have Minuteman. So we have the TAC hearing, and somebody here is going to ask him a question about the crossing at Town Hall.
Lighting up the crosswalk.
Lighting crosswalks.
Also mobility planning.
Mobility planning.
Mobility planning.
Okay. Then we're going to have Minuteman. That will probably take an hour, from past experience, which means then we'll have maybe another hour for other budgets. So please, classification, personnel budget.
Reclass, okay.
Okay. We'll do the parking. If you could send that to me, I'll send it out to everybody. Okay. And any other, even small budgets, but let's try to pile them in. Because on Wednesday, we have the school department. That's going to take the whole night. And we've got to have discussions and do some voting on it afterwards. And then we still have the other two free grant, when will water and sewer be ready?
We're working on it, but probably later in March.
Okay.
After the GIC.
Okay. Pensions and health insurance?
That's form one. Yep, we'll have that.
Okay.
All of those.
Any further business? Okay, it's very productive. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.